Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. Oh, thank you so much. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri, and our next guest is a beloved improv comic and now the creator and star of the wonderful new Showtime show, Work in Progress, where Abby McEnany plays Abby, a self-identified fat queer lesbian whose despair begins to wane when she begins a new relationship. Please welcome the fantastic Abby McEnany. Let's hear it. Hello.
Hi. I'm just gonna fix a queer dyke, not a queer lesbian.
It was
That's
written
okay.
that way. I didn't even feel comfortable using the word fat, to be honest with you. But it
Well,
was
I mean,
written
that's
that
why
way.
it's the people like when the marketing folks were like, well, can we put in self-identified because we don't want to be like, look at this fat person. So I was like, yeah, I'm a fat queer dyke. So yeah, that's okay. I'm definitely not a lesbian because yeah. All right.
Gotcha. I guess I guess I
clear.
equated the two.
Yeah, not the same. Yeah.
Never, straightaway man, never not making mistakes.
Hey
My
man,
apologies.
honestly, an identity is so fascinating to me, and it's constantly changing, and I think that's beautiful. And I just wanted to make it clear. No bad, like no problem.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's what the show, in a lot of ways, is about: is the constantly shifting identity, and what that means, especially for someone who is cripplingly self-aware, which I think your character.
Yeah, my character is cripplingly. See, I can't even talk, you guys.
Cripplingly
yeah,
self-aware.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say that's kind of the case with your character?
Yes, it's very much the case with my character. Yeah. Yeah.
Entirety of the interview.
Yes. I know everything is like that.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I think it's just like a messy story about a messy person who's struggling and feels like a failure and doesn't know where they fit. And yeah, and so has set up a countdown to kill herself if things don't get better because she's sick of being a burden. So
I love it. I told you this.
it's a comedy.
I love it so much, and I'm going to go on a brief rant without a question, but I just want to tell you why I love it. And one of the reasons that I love it is that I feel like in the past 10 years or so, we have gotten a slew of like personal shows with a lead character who's kind of a mess, but usually they are a terrible person, and that is where the comedy comes from. And sometimes that works, and it's amazingly funny. Danny McBride is kind of the king at doing that. And then sometimes it's a dramedy, and it sort of works, but oftentimes what the shows have to do to make you like that main character is make everybody else around them kind of shittier in different ways, and yours does not do that. Your character isn't shitty, and those that are around her are not necessarily shitty. She's just kind of a mess and struggling, and somehow you make that work. There's no villains. There's no clear hero of any kind. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense because I think, yeah, somebody was like, well, you're queer, but you're not perfect. I'm like, who's perfect? And also, I love that people, like that person was like, so you think all queer people are perfect? That's a way to start the day. I like that. Let's start that narrative out there. Yeah, there's no... it's funny because we didn't even think about it to do the setup that way. But yeah, I think that's true. Everybody has a lot of flaws. We show that people are really trying their best, and we wanted to create not only in the show, but in this way that we're creating the show that people mess up. We may mess up. We're here to learn. We want to be better, and that doesn't make anybody, at least in the show or the people in our life, like bad people. People can mess up and learn, and if we create like communities where we can talk about stuff and people are opening to change and learn and become better. Like I just want to be a better person, both my character and me as a human being. And I always say I mess up a lot in real life. I'm sure we didn't do everything right in the show, and but that's okay. Like we want to be better. That was a long answer.
Hard same.
Oh, yeah.
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 You told me in the agreement that this was sort of born from a storytelling thing that you did. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. I started doing some storytelling maybe like 5 years ago in Chicago, and I really mostly
improv comedy prior to that.
Yeah,
right?
improv comedy and then some sketch comedy.
Okay.
So I was asked to do a storytelling thing, and it made me laugh because actually it was called Chicago Ideas Week. Is this thing that happens every year in Chicago, which is so wonderful. They pick a theme and then people come in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know about that because I routinely watch Tracy Letz's lecture on how to be a writer.
Oh my
at
gosh.
Chicago Ideas Week. It's on YouTube, and anytime I need inspiration, I
You
watch
go to
it.
Tracy Letts. Yeah, that's amazing. He's amazing. I don't know him personally, but woo, Woo. Hi Tracy, let's. So they had a night. They had a night the week before, sponsored by Second City, where I had been on Torco and worked, and the night was called My Biggest Mistake, and it was people coming telling stories and stuff. So I get an email. And it was saying, "Hey, it's we were wondering if you wanted to tell a story at this event called My Biggest Mistake." Now the thing is that at Second City, there's tons of actors that worked there. I never was on a stage there. I was just in the touring company and stuff. And out of their whole stable of actors, they're like, "Failure? Let's get McEnany." It's like this things like about failure and
mistakes a lot.
Let's see if McEnany will do it. And so and I really it was amazing. Like you can tell real stories and like have some kind of connection and so then out of that I created this like 55-minute show of real life stories.
But do you think that is based off the fact that people assume that you make mistakes a lot, or as you said to me in the green room, which your character has, which is diarrhea of the mouth quite often, which is that
I called it verbal vomit.
Verbal vomit.
I know, but
which
yeah,
you
verbal
probably
diarrhea.
you probably are more comfortable with talking about your mistakes with people on a regular basis, or no?
I don't know. I mean, I think what's so like in the improv community, anyways. In Chicago, like we're a lot of people are very open about talking about what they mess up. I never want to say I'm better at it or more open about it than anybody else. They're I don't know. I just always love that. Like they have like a stable of like 1,000 actors, and they're like, "No, we'll give this failure a shot." But then so then I was able to tell I was like, I really like this art form, and then created this thing, and it was called Work in Progress. Lots of creativity, and then my friend Tim Mason, who's my co-creator, came and we were going to work on something else, and we decided just to write a TV show based on this. That's where it came out.
Wow. I have to say, I relate deeply to you being tapped to talk about your mistakes, because I never want to hear anybody tell a story where they are a success in it. I find nothing more boring than when someone tells me a story where like, and then I told him to get out of there, and then they left, and I won, and you're like, that's great, man. Like, tell me a story where you farted in front of your girlfriend and it was embarrassing. That's what I want to hear about.
I think that it's so funny because I think especially I've always that self-promotion stuff that they ask you to write about, like, hey,
terrible at it.
I mean, yeah, and it's also like, yeah, it's so weird. Like, oh, I'm so proud to present this to you. Like, oh my God, I'm like crying in a fetal position on my couch, and they're making me write this thing. So will you please watch it? You know what I mean? Like,
pour over your bio.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to be positive while you're like when you send them, but while you're writing, you're going, oh, I did that.
Yeah.
Oh, I did that. That was horrible.
Yeah, like actually, Tim, like when we were submitting to Sundance, like I gave him he's like, well, we need bios. So I think it was for Sundance, and so I sent him my bio. It was like two sentences. It was like, Abby McEnany performs around the city in improv, and she created a few one-woman shows. What else is there to say?
A few one-woman shows, not even the titles of the show.
Yeah, I mean, why? I don't even remember what it was. But yeah, it's hard, I don't know. But I think that I like that idea. Like, we didn't purposely go out not to make villains. It's just like we're showing what I think. Well, I have to say, I only speak for myself, right? This show is through my point of view. And I never claim to speak for anybody else who's living any experience, so be it mental illness, queerness, being old, being fat, being not gender nonconforming, being mentally ill, whatever. I'm speaking my life. And in my life, I'm not surrounded by villains. I'm surrounded by people who are really trying and lovely people that have my back. And that's why I've survived. And I don't know.
Well, that said, though, while you are not trying to speak for anybody, I think that we probably, on the face of it, couldn't be any more different than we are.
We wear glasses and we're white and we have short hair.
Yeah,
there's a lot.
There's that. Yeah. But when I watched the show, I related deeply to Abby, the character, and the existential struggle that she was going through, and how she felt in regards to how she related to the world around her.
That's amazing, and I think that thank you for that. And I didn't want to be pigeonholed as a queer show, and that's not being anti-queer. I just think that like when you put things in a box, and it's like then people who aren't queer won't be interested in it, or like won't give it a chance. And this is a story. I happen to be queer, and most of the characters, like not most, but many are queer. And I just think when we start pigeonholing, this is a human story, right? And
That said, it happens to take place within the queer community.
Yeah.
So therefore, you are, I hate the phrase shedding a light, but you are like sort of you are deeply ingrained in stories within the queer community.
Sure.
Show.
Yeah, and I hopefully like telling stories about being a very depressed person who's struggling, and somebody who's fat who hates themselves for that, and somebody in a family who has, who's the younger one, and like is like not an adult yet or can't make decisions. You know what I mean? Like I just think that. And I got some pushback when I said I didn't want it to be seen as a queer story, that I was being anti-queer. And I'm obviously not anti-queer. I just think when we start pigeonholing it, like we already do that enough in society, right? And this, we just want to tell a human story. So.
That said, as much as you don't want to pigeonhole it that way, would you say it by and large still exists within that community? It's just that her existential struggle is probably could be more universally felt.
Sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, it's most, yeah. I don't, I guess I'm not really understanding, but yes.
I understand what you're saying.
It's definitely, and I just feel so lucky, like that we're on this network that, and we're right after the new L word, Generation Q, and I just love that we have this amazing show that comes before us, and that we're telling two totally different stories, like, and totally different worldviews, and or like ways.
The legacy show as well that's coming. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, and that, I mean, and nobody knows who I am, and so that only helped us that we had that we had this amazing show bring us up. But I just think that like I think it's powerful that you have two shows that seem to have nothing in common, and they're about queer women. And I just think that's two of an infinite amount of stories, right? And I just think that it's amazing that Showtime has provided us this platform. Yeah.
In the second episode, I think it's the second episode, there's a flashback to a lesbian bar in 2007,
Yeah.
and it's like clearly juxtaposed
Yes.
with this sort of. How would you describe the modern?
When we were,
that it is
I call it a queer wonderland, because when I came out, which I think probably, let's see, 92 maybe, my community was very white and very cis. And that's just not the case anymore if you're coming out as queer, and like, especially I would say like in an urban or metropolitan area, like, and so we did want to show there's a generational difference of what it was like to come out in the 90s and what it's like to come out in 2019, 2020, or like being young in those areas, and that was on purpose. We wanted to show that.
Yeah, what I loved about that was that while there is no clear animosity or hostility between the generations, it is just by showing the difference of how it looked, you could see how one might not be able to understand the other, or might be intimidated or threatened by the other in some way.
Right, and I would say absolutely, and I think. I'm often like, I'm kind of slow to stuff. Like, like my first real relationship was at 29. I got on Second City Touring Company at 40, and I was touring with people in their early 20s, right? I'm just kind of on this path that it takes me a long time to get places, and I think that's all right. That's just who I am. And so I perform.
What were you doing before that, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I've been performing forever. I'm just
okay.
I just never got it. Like, I mean, I'm just a slow. I've been improvising, doing sketch, like, doing this forever, like for 25 years. Yeah. And now I finally got a job, and my dad can be like, oh, she can pay her insurance this year. She doesn't have to put on her credit card, and this is for Dad. Anyways, yeah, I mean, people are like, what do you do to make money? I'm like, I don't know. I'm an artist that's like, fucking cobbling shit together. I don't know. Like, but I just really I've always wanted to write and act and perform, whatever. But I lost my place. Doesn't matter.
You're my favorite. That's okay.
Oh.
I love this conversation.
I had a really good point. Jury's out. But you guys, let's just say I had a really good point.
Well, we were talking about the juxtaposition of the generation.
Oh, yes.
Does that help?
Yeah. Oh, I would say that there isn't judgment, right? Like from my character, and there is. I just like. There's. I don't think this is what I was going to say. So put your expectations lower. But I just love like that. There's as you go into this party, and there's like many gender expressions and sexuality expressions are shown, and there are folks of all different like races and sizes, which is very powerful for me. Like, I think I talk to a lot of queer people and trans folks, and they talk about, like, I've heard many people say, like, how hard it was to be growing up queer. And for me, like, I mean, that wasn't great. Or, like, you know, I came out, you know, when in my 20s, but, like, I mean, I was still into dudes. There wasn't tons of interest, hard to believe, but it was harder for me as a fat kid. Like, you know, that fear of being, like, called out and shamed and bullied or like teased, you know, that's where my pain comes from, you know. And I'm lucky enough to have grown up in a family that was not anti-queer and, like, not I like, you know, I massive OCD and phobias and anxieties and stuff. And I was like, I went into therapy at 8th grade, and we had the means to do that. And it wasn't taboo for my parents. And I went on meds. And, like, so I have this privilege. I'm a rambler, verbal vomiter. But anyways, my hardness of growing up was more about being fat. Right. So, no, but that you're piping smoking. I don't know. I mean, I don't, you guys. What am I saying? Rick is like, now currently I'm his least favorite. Yeah, that went down fast.
No. You don't understand. You have maintained my favorite. Right. This is what I love. Actually, right. I prefer this
oh, boy.
to the standard question and answer.
Yeah.
Julia Sweeney has a part in the show.
Yes.
And part of that is because your character talks about how Julia's Pat character from an SNL made your life hell.
Yes.
Is that based in reality?
Yes.
Where did that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say I was Pat, the character Pat, and Julia was also off SNL when this started happening. Like, you know, and I was just kind of, you know, coming into my own, wearing a lot of overalls. Amazing. And you know, being, you know, big, and, like, you know, I used to actually have black hair. Who could believe it? And in glasses and stuff. And
well, the black wig that they have on you,
I mean,
past is very funny.
I mean, it's hilarious. Like, you know, for a while the hairdresser who would stopped asking me, like, so you want to do anything about the gray? I'm like, no, I don't. I want to keep it gray. But I would say, you know, like, you know, so. Let's say Pat didn't ruin my life. It's the bigotry and the hatred of folks that, like, took this character and used it as a way to wound me and hurt people and hurt folks. I'm hearing from a lot of folks that they hate Julia Sweeney and they hate Pat. I'm like, whoa. Julia Sweeney's, like, a very dear friend of mine now, and so generous. And I think, you know, it's also, we can learn from history. And, like, when Pat came out, I was laughing. Like, I loved Pat, you know, and I just think, but it was hard. And also, like, the thing is, you know, in the pilot, we show me going into a party at my girlfriend's house, and, like, basically that happened in real life. And these two, like, bros called me Pat. And it was like, I'm not a very confrontational person because it makes me nervous. But I was so tired. I had just done a really bad improv show, hard to believe. So I went up and I was like, dude, what did you say? And so that really happened. But I also, let's just say, I was called Pat in a lesbian bar by a lesbian, you know? So it's just like, that sucks. Like, where am I safe? Like, where can I be myself? And I think a lot of that show is, where do I fit? Where can I be? You know what I mean?
This show.
Of this thing.
Yeah, the one.
Yeah, and I would say, like, a lot of my life is where do I fit? And I think, yeah. And I think it's funny because, like, as a person, an other, right, a woman, a fat person, a queer person, like, I want to be loud and be strong and say things and take my space. But then as a fat person, I want to be out of the way and not cause a ruckus. You know, it's like kind of this internal thing. Like, I always feel like I'm bumping people, you know, and, like, it's like weird thing about drawing attention to yourself and speaking up, and then also not wanting anybody to look at you.
Hard relate again. So, I mean, not in all of those facets.
Okay, skinny bitch.
Look,
however you feel about, I didn't mean to say how you feel about yourself.
No, of course not.
Okay, you're like, thanks, girl.
But that idea of, like, wanting to own your space and wanting to be loud and wanting to speak up, but then at the same time having, like, a deep-seated feeling of, like, I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah,
I don't want to be that loud.
Exactly right.
You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Am I talking too much? Am I talking about myself too much? Am I asking too much about you?
That's right.
Like, what am I being invasive or nosy right now?
Right.
That feeling that never leaves the back.
Right. And we were in
head.
the green room and we're like, did I interrupt you? No, I think I interrupted you. Like, yeah.
Yeah, most of our 10-minute conversation in the green room was apologies.
Sorry. Yeah. And, like, also, I think it's really, you know, I don't know, you know, I think as girls, like growing up, like I don't, you apologize. I mean, I apologize so much, and it's like I gotta stop apologizing. Yeah, that's been on my to-do list for 52 years. So maybe this is the time. It won't be.
Well, the show is a huge success, and you don't have to apologize anymore because people just want to be around you, and you just own your space naturally. Yeah, you can turn that into
Yeah, jury's out on that, but thank you very much.
One of the things that, and I mentioned this to you in the green room, kind of, that I'm always impressed by when someone makes a show like this, which there aren't many shows like this, but a show that is comprised of all of your anxieties about yourself, which end up having to be exaggerated in some form or another so that you can have dramatic scenes and that there can be conflict and there can be an arc. How that affects you personally while you're writing it. I imagine once you perform it and once you're editing it, it's kind of a different feeling. At that point, it becomes fairly like, there's so much things that you can do to change it, and you have to just sort of look at it from an objective point of view. But the writing of it, I would imagine, it's like, oh, am I really like that? Do I really do this kind of feeling?
Oh, I would say like I'm very like I'm pretty aware of that I am like that, and I do that. So that was never a thing. It was I was more about I would say of course there are heightened things, and I think the character Abby does a few very bad things, and I have not done those things, but it was like for dramatic or like story arc or like seasonal arc things that we did that. But I'm not saying I'm not a bad bird. Like I mess up all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird, dude. Wow, she really summed it up great. It's weird, dude.
Do you find yourself having conversations though in the writer's room of like, I wouldn't do that, or
Yes.
or someone has to be like, well, it's not you.
Yes.
It's Abby the character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Constantly. Yes. And actually for sure. And actually the first season we started writing it before we actually got our deal. Like our guys were like, yeah, we think Showtime's a go, but like they're going to want it really fast, so you got to start writing it. So we started writing without a deal. Yeah. And it was because we didn't have any money.
Just you and Tim
and Lilly Wachowski.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
okay.
so we all the pilot, episode 1 that was shown. That's actually the pilot that Tim and I created and wrote and produced on our own, and was at Sundance less than a year ago, which is crazy. And the episodes 2 through 7 were written with Lilly. Yeah.
How did you get in touch with Lilly and start working with her?
Well, Lily's been a friend of mine. I think we've been trying to figure it out, like probably between 4 and 5 years. She lives in my neighborhood, and her partner is a friend of mine who I've known for 25 years. And I was walking, so I was like, we met on a street corner. I was walking in Andersonville, and I heard Mickey go, hey, Abby. And I went over and I met Lilly and didn't know she was the Lilly Wachowski. I was like, hi, Lilly. And then we just started to be friends. And then... she's just...
What was it like having her in the writer's room? Because, I mean, I know Lilly, the Wachowskis, they did Sense8, which was their show, but even just having written as many movies as I'm sure that they have that have been made and have not been made, her ability to immediately know what a scene is about and how to get to the meat of it, I'm sure was that part of what she did in the writer's room?
I mean, there's so many things that she brought, and I think that Lilly, Tim, and I all have different strengths. And I mean, not only, and somebody was like, well, she doesn't really have a comedy background. Like, she's amazingly funny. She's also smart, so smart. Like, she's brilliant. I'm always like, oh my gosh, yeah. Just even in everyday life. And her language, like, she has such beautiful use of words. Like, we were laughing when you read this what are they called? Scripts. When you read the scripts, you can tell which scene direction she wrote, because we're like, oh, Lilly wrote this one because it's just so beautiful. I mean, yeah. So what was it?
Very clear and concise.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say she brought so much, not only because she gives zero. I was told I could swear, right?
Yeah, you can.
I already have, but I'm going to ask. So she gives zero fucks about Hollywood or the industry. She doesn't care what people think. And as somebody who doesn't know anything and cares about what people think, like, that's an amazing thing to have this, she and her sister are, could be said, like, they changed cinema, very important writer-directors, like, the most important writer-directors, right? So, and she's on my side. Like, she's like, this is the story that I want to help tell. And that's an amazingly powerful gift that she gave me. So I don't think I answered your question, but it's been amazing.
Well, and the fact that she and her sister direct $200 million movies.
Yeah.
And she's in the writer's room writing this with you.
She took a pay cut. Let's just. I think like we figured. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think that we figured out that our whole season. What was it? Our season budget for our whole 8 episodes.
Like a day on Matrix Revolutions.
Well, it was. I think it was less than what they got for an episode for. What was their budget for an episode of Sense8?
Yeah.
So I was like, "Hey guys, meet Lilly, my friend who took a $10 million pay cut." I mean, yeah. So
I'm sure that's not obviously why she was doing. Yeah.
no,
you know.
she. I mean, honestly, she just like. It's an amazing gift. She wants to tell the story and to have her help and like just really guide us, you know, that she's like, no, it's really important that we like make sure that we are you know, our world is peopled with queers. It's not just people in the cast, but it's also like our Lyft drivers, people, our bartenders, our, you know, people who work at stores, whatever. That's what my life is like. That's what her life, like we, you know, we are everywhere and you know, and we don't see that a lot. And then she gave us that power. Like we had this, I call it this queer day of casting at our wonderful casting agency in Chicago. And we put it out like, hey, are you trans? Are you gender nonconforming? Are you queer? You don't have to be you don't even have to be a performer. Why don't you come on down? And we had this day of auditions. It was me and Lilly. We met these amazing performers and some not performers. We had like, we just talked to them, got to know them. They auditioned. And it was like, honestly, the most moving, powerful day of this whole experience was to have people that you don't see on TV are on TV. And I'm one of them, right? Like this, me, like I'm a lead of a show. Are you kidding me? Like it's crazy. And we have these beautiful, I don't know. I just love that's powerful, and that's because Lilly was like, "We're going to do this," and we got to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I love this brief thing in the episode. I think it's episode 3 where you're taking Ubers across town and
Lyfts.
Lyfts. Excuse me.
It's okay.
Sorry, are they
It's all right.
sponsoring the show? Sorry.
Well, you know, actually, what's really funny is that I'm kind of like, oh, this whole sponsorship thing, but that was all written as Lyft, and then Lawrence is one of our EPs was like, well, maybe they'll help us out. We got some Lyft credits. They did help us. I was like, okay.
One of the is that you and Chris, who are going to be sleeping together that evening, are sort of going over the kind of rules and regulations of what your evening is going to be like, and all of the drivers that you have are totally okay with it and almost open to hearing, like, I mean, if they're eavesdropping it, they're doing it with a sense of kind of compassion, and love. They're not going to mock or get offended in any way. I love that aspect because I think any other show would have had the driver be like, "Shut up! You can't talk about this in my car."
Yeah, it's like I love that too. You know, it's just
I said no question. Just
I was going to say I don't know. Yes, thank you.
Well, I think in regards to populating even peripheral characters with either queer or queer understanding, queer adjacent people.
Yeah. I mean, that was so powerful, you know, and like, you know, the trans actors play trans characters, you know, and we really tried. It's a Lilly calls it a queerific show. It's very queer, and like we wanted to that, and we just wanted. That's what, you know, and we're not all thin, and we're not all young, and we're not all conventionally gorgeous, you know. We're like, some of us are fat and messy and gray-haired and, you know, whatever. Like, it's just like, it's through my eyes, this is what my life is like. And it's not like beautified for Hollywood or TV. And I often say, like, we're not palatable queers for America, right? Like, whatever that means, but we're not safe queers for America. And the fact that we get this amazing 30-minute platform is powerful.
What was the hardest part about the show for you?
I mean, I think that there were so many hard parts, but it's funny because like I never, like when I would talk to friends, like it's like my dream came true, right? So like that's the overlying thing. I think when you're writing and you're also acting and then you're producing and like you'd never been on a set before and you're really learning everything, it can be daunting, but it was also the most powerful thing in the world. And I have to say, a lot of the things that made that work was we wrote and shot and did post all in Chicago. It's a Chicago show, right? And we have Tim and I have an amazing community there. And so I would say a lot of it was just all new, and not knowing like how things work was hard. But I have to say, like, I would go on. Our crew was so amazing. They had way more experience than we did, and I would be like, I'm new. I don't know how anything works, and they all helped me. And I would say the crew, especially the ones that were close to me every day, the hair and makeup, the set dresser, our sound people, and the camera department, like they're dear friends of mine now. Like they were with me every step of the way and had my back, and I just feel really lucky about that.
I think we have time for a few questions from the audience. 2 questions right here. Hi.
Hi. What was it like working with Julia Sweeney regarding the PAT? And was she on board right from the beginning?
She was indeed, yeah. So we reached out to her through somebody at Second City who knew her, and Tim just was like, "Hey, my friend Abby and I are writing this show. She in real life was affected by your Pat character, and this is what we want to do." She's like, "I'm on board," and she got paid $125 to do the pilot, like, because, you know, we funded it ourselves. It was all, like, we had to come up with the money. And she never had any editorial things. Like, she was like, oh, I don't want to be portrayed like that. It was like, she's very lovely and generous. And
well, she is portrayed as lovely and generous, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. But that was like, you know, I remember telling Tim, like, Tim was like, well, you know, we might have to change it. I'm like, I'm not changing it. I'm not, like, we're not. But we didn't have, like, I wouldn't have, and that's because I think that's crap when you change life, like, the truth, right? But also, she didn't want to. Like, she's very open, and she's very, we've talked about Pat a lot, and I think we're not necessarily on the same page 1,000%, but that's okay. People are different. You can still love people that don't exactly think the way, but she's so open, and we're all learning. I don't know. It was wonderful.
Yeah. One more.
Hi, Abby.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you, and I think you've alluded to this, how much of Abby is Abby?
I would say, I've said before, like, it depends, like, what time of day it is and who's asking. So I would say anywhere from 48% to 96%. It depends. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
In live interview format, would you say it's closer to like 80 to 90?
I mean, honestly, I don't. What time is it? No, I just joke. How much coffee have I had? I don't know. I mean, I think the essence of Abby is very much the same. I also am a really private person. I've set up ways to protect myself, you know, and so yeah, I would say I don't know, 80%. I'm just making, you know, I'm making that number.
And I wanted to say to you, this show is so human.
Thank you.
You know, like they say, you don't have to be Jewish to love Levi's. You don't have to be a member of any community to feel the heart and the pain and the laughter that this show has for its audience.
Thank you so much.
So
I really
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Has you know, part of the thing that you said is, like, you know, this is your first time on a television set and you've been doing this for 25 years. Has getting the show, and you have been greenlit for season 2.
Yeah,
correct?
we just found out on Monday.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Has any of that offset any of your anxiety or self-consciousness, or has it fueled it even more?
I mean, I would say, like, I mean, certain things I'm like, oh, actually, I did some, like, I had some, and I'm going to say, like, success is very interesting. Like, what does success mean? I would say I've had some professional success now, right? So that's pretty awesome. And the fact that I mean, honestly, I found out at 10 a.m. Central Time on Monday, so this is brand new. And, like, now, oh, I have a job for another year or so that's amazing. Like, that's great. But, like, I would say, like, the insecurities and stuff, it kind of moves to other stuff.
I love it so much.
I mean, it just opens up more stuff. But I have to say, like, overall, I'm so grateful. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky, you know, and I'm just surrounded by amazing people, and yeah. So.
Well, I'm so happy that this show exists.
Thank
I love
you.
it so much, and I love having been introduced to you.
Thank you.
and your work.
What an honor.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, you guys. Thank you.
The show, Work in Progress, is on Showtime. I can't wait for season 2. Everybody give Abby a huge round of applause for being here.
Thank you so much.